She faced a shocking 1,000-date bill, then an incredible CEO said, "Pretend you're with me." Megan's pulse raced as the waiter placed the bill on the table, a cold wave of anxiety washing over her. She glanced at Derek, his charming smile radiating confidence. Yet the stark 1,000 figure loomed over her like a storm cloud. Her mind whirled, a million thoughts competing for attention. How did a simple evening morph into this financial abyss? She felt the flush creep up her neck, overwhelming her with embarrassment. A waitress, fresh from a long shift where tips barely scratched the surface of her bills, suddenly felt painfully palpable next to the suave CEO, who seemed to navigate life with effortless grace. Was she really cut out for this world? Their playful banter had made the evening sparkle, but now Megan grappled with the stark divide between them. She could almost hear her father's dismissive words echoing in her head, as if he could see into this moment. "You really think you can step into the world of design? You should be focusing on stability, not silly dreams." The suffocating weight of her upbringing threatened to suffocate her joy. Why did she even say yes to this date? Was this what she wanted? Or was she simply chasing a dream wrapped in the alluring package of Derek? As Derek effortlessly offered to cover the cost, a chill ran through her. "Pretend you're with me," he said, his grin imploring her to join him in a charade that felt dangerously deceptive. Was it a joke? Or an invitation to deny her truth for the sake of his ease? Did he not see how heavy her heart was, how raw the struggle felt? She pondered whether she could ever inhabit a world so unlike her own while clinging to the values that had guided her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their conversation spiraled into a deep philosophical exchange, igniting an unexpected bond amid their contrasting experiences. Each time Derek opened up about his world, she felt a mixture of admiration and resentment. He was a breath of fresh air, but she also noticed the tightening noose of her insecurities as his narratives revealed the ease with which people like him navigated life. The weight pressing on her chest felt heavier with every glamorous anecdote, the idyllic New York skyline shining mockingly in the background. They began meeting every week, discussing architecture, dreams, and the nuances of wealth. Yet with each session, Megan's sense of self seemed to fray. What began as inspiration morphed into an identity crisis. Was she merely a figment of Derek's privilege, her vision shaded by his glaring advantages? The more she immersed herself, the more she questioned her worth. Her sketches, once vibrant expressions of her spirit, felt tainted by doubt. In the heat of one late-night brainstorming session, she felt it an idea, a spark that could potentially reshape urban design. But as the pressure mounted around Derek's investors and their expectations, she sensed the fragile nature of their partnership fracturing. What if he succeeded, while she remained the shadow, forever relegated to the background? Staring blankly at the wall plastered with dreams yet to be realized, Megan teetered on the edge of her ambition. Would she fight for her vision, or would she retreat into the shadows, shackled by fear and the haunting certainty that she might never escape her past? The days following that fateful dinner blurred into an unending cycle of self-doubt and creative stagnation. Megan wrestled with the imbalance of her relationship with Derek. Each meeting felt like a test she wasn't prepared to take. While he effortlessly navigated through architectural concepts and visionary ideas, Megan found herself lost in a maze of comparisons, scrutinizing every line she sketched with agonizing precision. She sought comfort in her sketchbook, but the pages were tainted with apprehension, a constant reminder of how far she felt from her ambitions. The vibrant strokes that once excited her were now barely whispers of potential. Every time she put pencil to paper, her heart raced with frustration, a fear that she was betraying not just her dreams, but the very essence of who she was. Their recent conversations echoed relentlessly in her mind, particularly the words about pretending, a notion that gnawed at her sense of integrity. Was pretending to share Derek's world uplifting or degrading? It became increasingly difficult to differentiate between genuine enthusiasm for her work and a performance wrapped around enduring the pressure of his expectations. The more she interacted with Derek's world, the more it felt like a masquerade, one that highlighted her insecurities rather than alleviating them. One evening, after a particularly intense brainstorming session that had felt more like an interrogation than collaboration, Megan stormed out of the cafe. As she briskly walked through the bustling streets of Manhattan, buildings towering over her, as if casting shadows deep into her heart, the thought crystallized. Enough was enough. She returned home, and in that small apartment adorned with dreams of her own making, she found a renewed focus. She resolved to channel her frustration into her work. With fierce determination, she pulled out her laptop and spent endless hours researching urban design case studies, experts, and innovations. For every setback in her feelings of inadequacy, she sought 10 pieces of knowledge that could bolster her confidence. Slowly, she began drafting her own perspective on urban design, a reflection of the community, not luxury. Megan experimented with contrasting forms and materials, forging a voice that felt distinctly her own. The lines she created in the dark hours of the night were no longer burdensome. They became a conduit for her journey, connecting her reality to her aspirations. Among the clutter of crumpled sketches emerged concepts that pushed boundaries, inviting diverse perspectives, rather than merely mimicking the elite world she had encountered with Derek. As the ideas transformed into tangible designs, a subtle shift occurred in her emotional landscape. With each dawn, she found herself fueled by a potent mixture of creativity and autonomy. The city outside her window, once a source of inadequacy and envy, morphed into an endless canvas of opportunity. The shadows that once weighed her down now became silhouettes against the rising sun of her ambition. Yet a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. How would Derek respond to her newfound confidence? Would he view her as a rival? Or worse, would he dismiss her efforts because they emerged from a place distinct from his own? Clenching her jaws with resolve, Megan reviewed her best work yet, the design screaming for validation and recognition that it was finally time to expose her work to the harsh light of scrutiny. A decision loomed heavy over her, a meeting with Derek to unveil her latest endeavors. Would she navigate this interaction with courage, or would fear push her back into the shadows? Megan took a deep breath, considering her options. The moment had arrived. Would she step forward and seize control of her spotlight, or would she shrink back into the comfort of familiarity? As she prepared, the question lingered. Who would she truly be when faced with her truth? Megan stood in front of the mirror, the soft light of her apartment illuminating her determined expression. This was more than just a meeting. It was a pivotal moment, one that would define her trajectory in both her professional life and her relationship with Derek. She struggled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, each emotion wrestling for dominance. As she gathered her presentation materials, Megan thought about how far she had come in such a short time. The designs she had meticulously crafted over the past weeks represented who she was becoming, an architect with a voice of her own. She imagined the moment Derek would lay eyes on her work, could see the way his brows might lift in surprise or skepticism. Would he question what had fueled her transformation? Or would he finally recognize her as an equal collaborator instead of merely an admirer in his shadow? She arrived at the cafe early, the air thick with anticipation. It was familiar, yet it felt entirely different. Now, each corner of the cafe echoed with possibilities rather than self-doubt. Megan sat at a table set against a wall of windows, providing a view of bustling street life. The city buzzed outside, but inside, she felt cocooned, armed with her sketches and knowledge. It was a stark contrast to the last brainstorming session, where she had felt cornered and observed through a critical lens. As Derek walked in, Megan felt a surge of adrenaline. He looked confident, his usual efficiency radiating as he approached her table. They exchanged greetings, and while he launched into familiar small talk, she noted the stark difference in her demeanor. Today, she wasn't just there for the conversation. She was ready to assert her place. "Hey, I've been working on some concepts," Megan said, cutting through the small talk, her voice steady. She slid her portfolio towards him, each sketch capturing her perspective on urban design, reflecting not just buildings, but the stories of the communities surrounding them. Derek's eyes shifted from the sketches to her face, reading the weight of her intent. He flipped through the pages, his brows furrowing in concentration. Megan held her breath, anticipation swelling in her chest. After several moments, he set the sketches down, leaning back in his chair. "These are interesting," he said, pausing. "You're touching on themes I hadn't expected from your work." Megan's heart raced. Was that a compliment? The fleeting thrill gave way to a tinge of nervousness. "They are my themes, Derek. I realized I can't keep pretending to fit into someone else's mold." "Pretending?" he echoed, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. "Yes," she pressed, emboldened. "I was too focused on aligning with your ideas. I almost lost my own vision." The acknowledgement felt both liberating and terrifying. Derek leaned forward, intrigued. "So what are you saying? That you have your own vision separate from this?" Megan felt a wave of vulnerability wash over her. This was a risk, exposing her ideas to someone she had idolized for so long. "Yes, I want my designs to speak to authenticity, not just aesthetics. I think our industry often forgets the community aspect, that spaces need stories." For a moment, silence enveloped them as he contemplated her words. Megan braced for rejection, the knot in her stomach tightening, but instead, she saw a flicker of respect. "I admire your courage, Megan," Derek finally said, slowly nodding. But his words hung in the air, a stark reminder that admiration could still come with boundaries. She felt confronted by the unknown, propelled by the tension of what might follow. Would he challenge her perspective or embrace it? Would this be a breakthrough or a breakdown? As her heart thundered in her chest, the air shifted, and she realized that the true battle lay ahead, claiming her identity in a world that still seemed dominated by expectations. And just as hope surged, Derek's next words would either solidify her newfound assurance or dismantle it entirely. Would he support her vision, or would he inadvertently pull her back into the shadows of doubt? Megan held her breath as Derek leaned closer, the anticipation crackling in the air between them. "But," he resumed, his tone striking a delicate balance between curiosity and the weight of expectation, "you realize that pushing back against the norm can have consequences, right? This is a competitive industry, and not everyone will embrace what you're trying to create." His words hung heavily in the air, a stark reminder of the risk she was taking. The thin thread of validation she had felt started to fray as self-doubt crept back in. Was she really ready to step out from his shadow? She could feel her pulse quicken as she mentally combated the old feelings of inadequacy. "Of course, I understand," she replied, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. "But I think it's worth the risk. The way we design should reflect the people who inhabit those spaces, not just the aesthetic ideals we conjure up. If we keep playing it safe, true innovation will never emerge." The passion in her voice felt like a shield, steadying her resolve against the looming uncertainty. Derek gave her a thoughtful look, one that Megan could not quite interpret. Was he impressed, or was he merely assessing her spirit? "I admire your drive, but commitment to authenticity isn't enough unless you have the backing to execute it," he said. "Have you thought about how you could present this vision to our clients? That's where the real test lies." Megan felt a spark. This was not a dismissal, it was a challenge. "I have some ideas about how to present my design philosophy in a way that articulates community needs, and I'd love your feedback on that." Derek nodded, his expression shifting to one of interest. "What do you think works best for introducing concepts? A formal presentation might feel stiff, maybe a discussion format? Collaborating with the clients on their stories could be a dialogic approach." "Yes, that's exactly it." Megan leaned in, excitedly. "Involving them from the beginning captures their needs and makes the project personal. I want them to feel ownership over the designs." Her enthusiasm seemed to soften the severity of his gaze. They exchanged ideas, building on one another's thoughts, and the air buzzed with creativity. For the first time, Megan felt she was not just fighting for recognition, she was actively shaping her place in the discussion. After what felt like an invigorating hour, Derek leaned back, crossing his arms as a hint of a smile played on his lips. "I must admit, Megan, I haven't seen you this engaged before. It's refreshing." His compliment sent a surge through her. She had taken steps toward cultivating an identity rooted in her own vision, and in doing so, she had unexpectedly gained Derek's respect. There was no turning back now. As they resumed their conversation, Megan's thoughts shifted. How could she continue to promote her ideas while balancing the expectations of her team? Would she be able to maintain this momentum in future meetings? The cafe door swung open, and a rush of cold air swept through the room. Megan shivered, but excitement warmed her spirit. She realized that part of her journey was not only about knowing what she stood for, but also continually redefining it through interactions and challenges. But as the meeting wrapped up, Derek's words lingered in her mind. Remember, it's about balance, Megan. You need to question what you want versus what is expected. With his advice echoing in her thoughts, Megan left the cafe, an electrifying blend of hope and uncertainty coursing through her veins. This was a new chapter in her career, but the path was still shrouded in shadows. By the time she reached her apartment, she felt a pulse of determination. She needed to act on this newfound confidence and refine her message further. But could she persuade the others at the firm to see this vision through her eyes? As she pulled out her sketches to prepare for the next design presentation, a single question echoed in her mind. Would she be able to break through the walls of expectation that surrounded her? The firm's culture was notoriously resistant to change, and she could sense a significant challenge ahead. With visions of what could be flashing in her mind, Megan prepared to face her next confrontation. The real test awaited as she entered the den of skepticism at her workplace. Would they embrace her new ideas, or would she face pushback from those reluctant to redefine their vision? Megan felt the weight of anticipation as she stepped into the conference room the following morning. The sun streamed through the tall windows, highlighting the sleek lines of the furniture. This was her moment, yet her heart raced with trepidation. The firm's interior echoed with the footsteps of colleagues, creating an undercurrent of energy that mirrored her own conflicting feelings. Seated at the table were Derek and other senior team members, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. She noticed their disinterest flicker during meetings, yet welcomed the opportunity to engage them directly in a way that empowered her vision. The stakes were high. This would define her trajectory within the company. She took a deep breath, recalling Derek's insistence on balancing her desires with the expectations of the firm. If she wanted to shift perceptions, she had to tread carefully while remaining true to her convictions. Her design philosophy demanded a narrative, a way to connect with the people she aimed to serve. "Thank you for gathering today," Megan began, her voice steady yet animated. "I'm excited to share an innovative approach that reflects the real needs of our clients, rather than conforming solely to aesthetic trends." She sensed the initial resistance preparing to rise, as some eyed her incredulously, but she pressed on, drawing their attention to the sketches sprawled across the table. "I want to frame our projects as collaborative stories. Clients cope with unique challenges, and our designs should echo their realities." She observed heads nodding slightly, yet the room remained charged with skepticism. Was her vision resonating, or was she simply talking into a void? Megan transitioned into details, advocating for the integration of client narratives into their designs. Imagine how compelling it would be to engage clients in workshops where they share their lived experiences. It brings authenticity into the design process, creating spaces that genuinely reflect their identities. The fire in her voice lit the room, and the creeping shadows of doubt lessened with each word. But as she reached the core of her proposal, the imposing figure of John, a senior partner known for his traditional views, leaned back and crossed his arms defensively. "Megan, those workshops sound nice, but do you really think our clients can invest that kind of time? They expect us to deliver, not enlighten them." His tone was laced with condescension, which clawed at her burgeoning confidence. The rush of frustration tinged with determination coursed through her. This was what she had expected: the pushback from those tethered to conventional approaches. It wasn't just a critique, it was an opportunity to engage in dialogue. Rather than balk in defeat, she locked eyes with John. "I believe that if we want to bring something fresh to the table, we have to first understand the table itself," Megan countered. "Every project serves a purpose that can't be perceived through a single lens. Collaborating directly with clients allows us to uncover lessons that align design with authenticity. It might take time initially, but can you envision the long-term loyalty and satisfaction that fosters?" John's brow furrowed as her words echoed through the room. Derek observed thoughtfully, a flicker of approval dancing in his eyes. Megan sensed a shift. She was no longer a passive participant, but an active creator within the discourse. Her nervousness had transformed into a palpable charge of leadership. "Let us put it to a vote," Derek suggested, breaking the tension, "a pilot program with selected clients. Megan, you'll lead it." Megan felt her heart soar. The conversation had turned, and she was now on the cusp of implementing her vision. Yet, the thrill was tempered by an internal whisper of responsibility. Leading the project meant being the first to face setbacks if the plan faltered. As the meeting wrapped up, she felt invigorated, but self-doubt began to reemerge. What if they faced resistance from clients? What if the workshops proved to be a failure? Her pulse quickened at the thought. Determined to preserve this momentum, Megan resolved to prepare thoroughly. She needed to anticipate questions, craft a compelling narrative, and galvanize her team behind her. Was she prepared for this leadership role? As she left the conference room, adrenaline surged through her. The walls that had once constrained her thinking began to feel flexible, the shadows of doubt diminishing with each solid step. But what awaited her as she ventured deeper into this uncharted territory? Would the clients respond to her vision with the enthusiasm she anticipated, or would they unfurl their own reservations, creating challenges she hadn't foreseen? The path to authentic design stretched ahead, filled with the promise of discovery, but encumbered with the weight of uncertainty. She would face those clients soon, and the real challenge lay just beyond the horizon. Would she deliver, or would she find herself grappling with the consequences of her daring vision? Megan spent the next few days immersed in preparation. She transformed her workspace into a hub of creativity and strategy, walls adorned with sketches, sample materials, and notes reflecting the client's narratives she aimed to encapsulate. Every evening, she would pore over her design proposals, refining her pitch, each time battling the gnawing anxiety that came with leadership. That on Thursday, she scheduled an informal meeting with her design team, hoping to fuel their enthusiasm and address any concerns. They gathered in a small conference room, the air thick with anticipation. As faces turned expectantly toward her, she felt a surge of warmth. These were her allies. "All right, team," she said, trying to project confidence. "I need your insights as we prep for the pilot program. This isn't just my vision, it's ours." Their nods encouraged her, but she noticed lingering hesitations in a few eyes. Kelsey, a talented but reserved junior designer, spoke up first. "What if clients don't engage? They might feel awkward, or worse, think we're wasting their time." Megan felt her heart skip. Kelsey's point was valid, and it struck at the core of her fears. "What if we turn it into a fluid conversation instead of a rigid workshop?" She proposed. "If they feel comfortable, share a few drinks and appetizers. It might evolve naturally." The team nodded, the tension dissipating slightly. Over the next days, Megan refined her approach, integrating flexibility and adaptability into her plans. During evenings, she prepared scenarios to combat potential pushbacks, mentally rehearsing each response. Finally, the day of the first client workshop arrived. As she stood in front of the newly redesigned room, a blend of cozy seating and interactive design elements, her chest tightened. The clients would arrive soon, and a chorus of self-doubt flooded her thoughts. Could she lead this effectively? Would they even relate to her ideas? Just before the meeting began, Derek made a point to wish her luck, offering a reassurance that momentarily steadied her nerves. She took a deep breath, mentally grounding herself. This was her moment to demonstrate her worth, and she had to own her vision. As the clients entered, she felt the atmosphere shift. There was an air of curiosity mixed with uncertainty. Megan noted their expressions as she began, some eager, others skeptical, mirroring the subtle resistance she had encountered. She welcomed them warmly, offering a brief overview of what the day would entail and how their input would shape the upcoming designs. "Let me start by asking a question," she ventured, feeling her pulse quicken. "When you think about your space, what stories come to mind?" The room remained quiet. She felt the familiar pang of doubt, but pushed through, recounting her own experience with spaces that had transformed during times of personal growth. Gradually, a few clients began to unearth their own stories, sharing anecdotes that sparked discussion. Megan could sense a shift. The walls of formality were crumbling, personalities emerging in a way she had hoped for. An hour into the workshop, an unexpected voice pierced through a lull. A seasoned business owner named Caroline expressed her frustration regarding her previous design experiences. I feel like often it's not about us, but what designers think we want. Her candidness resonated, creating an opening Megan hadn't anticipated. Exactly. Megan seized the moment, her conviction bubbling to the surface. That's what I want to change here. Your experiences matter. They're integral to this process. She felt a surge of energy as the other clients began to chime in, their interactions growing spirited. But just as the conversation reached a dynamic crescendo, the door swung open, and John strolled in, an eyebrow raised. His presence loomed, overshadowing the breakthrough she had achieved. What was he doing here? Did he come to observe and critique? Megan's heart raced, a mix of excitement and trepidation flooding her veins. Would he jeopardize the openness she had fostered? The power dynamics shifted, and, for the first time, she felt the weight of her leadership expand from a responsibility to a test of resilience. As John interjected, raising his voice over the discussions. Megan's confidence wavered but flickered with defiance. The time had come to face her biggest opponent, yet not just in this workshop, but in the overarching narrative of her career. Would she stand her ground, or would she falter? With conviction surging through her, Megan took a step forward, ready to redefine the conversation, both for them and for herself. The moment was heavy with possibility, but uncertainty lurked beneath. Megan felt the electricity in the room shift as John spoke, each word heavy with the weight of judgment. His tone dripped with skepticism, and she could sense her team's unease radiating in subtle body language. A lean back, crossed arms, furtive glances. The bond she had begun to forge with her clients felt frayed with John's presence, as if his appearance threatened to unravel the collaborative spirit that had just emerged. Let us not forget, John announced, a hint of arrogance in his assertion, that design is about practicality. We need to ensure these clients' expectations align with efficiency and functionality, not just their desires. The response to his interruption was palpable. A murmur of disappointment swept through the room. Megan felt their eyes turn back to her, and in that moment, several thoughts raced through her mind. Why did John have to undermine her? Was practicality necessarily at odds with creativity? The questions tormented her, feeding into the insecurities she had fought so hard to quell. John, I completely agree, she replied, although her heart simmered within her chest. However, long-lasting designs stem from genuine connections. We need to understand not just what clients want, but why they want it. Their stories are just as critical as the project parameters. Megan's assertion surprised her. The conviction in her voice flowed from a well of understanding prompted by Caroline's candidness earlier. She wasn't merely preserving her position. She was asserting her vision, a vision that encompassed depth beyond mere aesthetics. John's eyebrow arched. But for a moment, he seemed to reconsider, the tension in the room crackling like static. Encouraged, Megan pressed forward. Our aim is to create spaces that resonate, spaces that people can relate to on a personal level. These stories, these connections, will drive the functionality you're emphasizing because they will embed a sense of ownership within those spaces. As she spoke, she caught glimpses of nodding heads. Her team had regained some composure, and even a few clients displayed curiosity. Perhaps they were willing to stand with her against John's corporate pragmatism. With the reins of the conversation slipping from John's grasp, Megan determined to seize the moment. Megan, it's admirable, but how do you propose to balance that emotional insight with the budget constraints? John countered, his posture rigid, eyes piercing. Megan paused. The question stung, grounding her in cold reality. Balancing emotion with practicality was not new, but it was a fragile dance, one she had obscured by focusing solely on the creativity of the moment. Budget is indeed a factor, she admitted, refining her thoughts in a heartbeat. However, the approach we take today can vastly impact long-term engagement. If clients feel a connection, they are more likely to invest in the proposals that inspire them, balancing cost with desire in a way that benefits us all. The voices in the room began to stir. The group was engaged again, the seeds of a dialogue sprouting from her words. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it showcased her ability to meld sensitivity with pragmatism. John's expression remained inscrutable, but Megan sensed the room had shifted. It turned from his critique to a collaborative inquiry. It wasn't just about design anymore. It was about connection, storytelling, and shared experiences. As the conversation unfolded, she noticed Kelsey leaning forward, a determined look lighting her eyes. They were all invested in this. Flashes of pride surged within her as her team began to voice their thoughts, reinforcing her stance with their creative ideas. It was becoming a true collaboration, the very essence of Megan's vision coming to life. But even as the dialogue flourished, doubt still lingered, tendrils of uncertainty creeping back into her mind. What if John's influence reappeared? What if this was a fleeting success, merely a moment of light before the inevitable storm? Her self-doubt threatened to overwhelm her once more. With John still present, the fight for her vision was just beginning. Megan focused, crafting her goal in her mind. She would not only navigate this challenge, but also provoke a deeper understanding in herself and her team, all while standing firm in her conviction. And then, a question surfaced, sharper than the rest. What would it take to fully assert her place as the leader of this project? What risks was she willing to undertake to solidify her vision before her own uncertainty could corrode the progress she had made? The air hummed with potential, and the looming prospect of confrontation beckoned her forward, a choice awaiting her. Megan took a deep breath, centering herself as the conversation shifted. Each moment felt amplified, the stakes magnified by John's unyielding presence. She recalled the conversations she had with her mentor, Caroline, who had encouraged her to embrace her instincts, to trust her voice. But here, in this tension-filled room, trusting her instincts felt daunting. What if they don't see the value? A small voice inside echoed, mired in doubt. She was standing at the precipice of leadership, and that made the stakes feel infinitely higher. Words poured from her like water, and she felt as if it would take only a drop of doubt for the dam to break. "Let us continue discussing the client's narratives," Megan suggested, her voice steadying. "We have backgrounds, interests, and unique needs. How do we encapsulate that into our designs?" The focus shifted again, the power subtly redistributing as colleagues began delving into clients' stories that in the process. Megan encouraged each member to share a glimpse of their ideas, curating a digital board of insights. The screen lit up with colorful images and succinct phrases, each idea a thread in the growing tapestry of their project. Clara spoke about her childhood memories of family gatherings. Jacob reminisced about the significance of colors that calmed his anxiety. Every revelation asserted their experiences into a unified vision, and Megan felt a spark of momentum growing. However, in the corner of her mind, the sharp edges of her insecurities lurked. Would it be enough? She adhered to the ideals she had outlined, but she could still sense John's piercing gaze lingering, waiting for an opportunity to pounce. The tension of doubt roiled within her like a storm on the horizon, waiting for the right moment to unleash chaos. Remember, the clients don't just want structures. They want homes, workspaces that reflect who they are. She encouraged her team, though internally, she battled her own chaos. How could she champion others' voices while finding clarity in her own? The brainstorming session flowed seamlessly, laughter punctuated moments of insight as ideas bounced around the room. Something shifted in Megan. She realized that her hesitation might stem from wanting everything to fall into place impeccably. Perfectionism had always been her retreat, but perhaps it was also her prison. Was it not enough for the project to develop organically, to embrace the imperfections that came with growth? As voices blended into a harmonious conversation, Megan felt herself transitioning. She was no longer merely the planner, but a facilitator of ideas, a catalyst for something larger than herself. The transition sparked something within her, an understanding that she could lead without micromanaging, empowering her colleagues to flourish in their creativity. But just as a lull settled over the discussion, John broke the moment. "Okay, everyone, let's not get carried away with dreams. Design should still focus on practicality. Don't lose sight of the core requirements." His words struck, his skepticism veiled as a protective mantra of reason. Megan felt her heart race. The tension coiled tighter at his words. "Practicality doesn't negate creativity, John. It can enhance it," she interjected, not backing down this time. "But what is the return on investment?" He shot back, his eyes challenging her. The entire room went silent. The air thickened, filled with the unsaid. Megan sensed her stomach knotting. Was she indulging in a fantasy, clinging to a narrative while ignoring the figures? But turning back would mean abandoning not just her proposals, but the journey of self-discovery that had sparked her ascent. Megan, what is your answer? Kelsey broke the silence, her hopeful gaze seeking guidance. In that instant, Megan understood the weight of their expectations. This calculation wasn't just fiscal, it entwined with their visions, their aspirations, their unity as a team. A flood of resolve surged through her veins. The return lies in emotional investment, she stated firmly. Clients who feel understood are more inclined to engage fully. The room buzzed again, slowly absorbing her commitment to both artistry and functionality. They were no longer just fighting for a project. They were in it together, for the vision they sculpted as a collective. As John recalibrated his stance, the fire suffusing Megan's spirit emboldened her. She wasn't just molding the designs. She was steering the very foundation of the project, her stance now tethered to both her team and her journey. But Megan couldn't shake how easily John's doubt penetrated her newfound confidence. What if he pulled the rug out from under her next time? What if their hard work was left hanging by a thread? The unsettling question stirred again. Could she face the storm he represented? Megan's focus sharpened. She needed to reinforce her foundations and confront that doubt head-on. The last thread of uncertainty sparkled in the air, shimmering between them as the next confrontation loomed, the irrefutable test of her newly affirmed leadership. The time had come to face not only John, but the very essence of her resolve. Megan's thoughts drummed against her skull as she exited the conference room, leaving behind the hushed voices and palpable tension. The comments from John echoed relentlessly, each word an anchor dragging her back into fear. Yet she clung to the sentiment of her last statement, the commitment to emotional engagement, a small ember of conviction lighting her path forward. Would she allow that ember to ignite into a flame, or would doubt snuff it out? As she stepped into her office, the space felt both familiar and foreign, as if she were rediscovering it through a new lens. The vibrant sketches plastered on the walls, remnants of past projects, seemed to mock her uncertainty. But Megan understood now that they were not just artifacts, they were victories. Each design was a testament to her ability to merge creativity with functionality, to adapt visions into tangible reality. The digital board showcasing their latest project remained open on her computer screen, a colorful tapestry of ideas reflecting new perspectives. As she reread her team's contributions, understanding blossomed within her. These were not just designs, but legacies waiting to be crafted. It struck her that leadership wasn't about erasing doubt or dispelling negativity, but weaving an environment where creativity could thrive even amidst scrutiny. Resolved not to bunker down in her self-doubt, she grabbed a marker and scrawled some personal notes on a whiteboard. "Trust the process," she wrote, the words resonating as a mantra she could recite to herself in moments of vulnerability. Embrace vulnerability. As she stepped back, Megan noticed a pattern. Many of her greatest achievements had emerged when she had allowed herself to be seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of her expertise. Yet John's challenge loomed, a stark reminder that not everyone would embrace her philosophy. He had cemented himself as the embodiment of traditional thinking, a loyal guardian of practicality. In her experience, innovation required risk, and that risk often invited skepticism. But that skepticism could be faced head-on, turned into motivation rather than paralyzing fear. With newfound determination, she began to prepare for their next meeting. Megan wanted to create a presentation that balanced the creative and the practical, ensuring it was so compelling that even John would hesitate to counter her claims. She envisioned merging quantitative data with client testimonials, showcasing how deeper emotional connections had historically translated into greater client loyalty and investment. Megan filled each slide with careful precision, presenting figures born from analyses of successful projects that demonstrated emotional engagement as a driving force behind design choices. The challenge was not merely to argue her point, but to illuminate an understanding that these choices would enhance their firm's unique identity and profitability simultaneously. As Megan rehearsed her words, pacing in her office, she felt a burgeoning confidence directing her movements. There was no denying the flutter of apprehension still lodged in her chest, but it was accompanied by something more powerful, clarity. Each phrase came to life, molded by the knowledge that she wasn't just orchestrating a design project, but proving to herself and her team that emotional intelligence could coexist with fiscal responsibility. The clock ticked toward her strategy meeting, and she felt a mix of excitement and dread building up inside her. What she might face next remained uncertain, and John's skepticism was a specter she couldn't ignore. But this time, she would meet it with clarity and strategy, rather than defensiveness. As she gathered her materials, a pulse of adrenaline coursed through her. She was prepared for this moment, not just to confront John, but to stake her claim in her own journey toward authentic leadership. The door swung open, signaling the start of the meeting. Faces turned toward her, and Megan steadied her breath. The moment of revelation would soon arrive, would her commitment to bridge the divide between creativity and practicality hold fast against the onslaught of doubt. She could feel the magnitude of the challenge ahead. As the group settled in, Megan's voice gathered strength, ready to defend her vision. And in that moment, she understood she was not merely fighting for a project. She was fighting for herself. Would this be a moment of accountability or a chance to redefine her narrative? She took a step forward, prepared to face John once more, the air thick with anticipation. The next few moments would determine whether she could finally silence the doubts for good. Megan stood at the forefront of the conference room, a palpable mix of excitement and resolve coursing through her veins. In the past, uncertainty and self-doubt had often held her back. Today was different. Today, she was ready to own her vision fully. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the thrill of potential she now recognized within herself. As she launched into her presentation, the room held its breath. Every detail was meticulously crafted, reflecting the hard work she had undertook in reimagining her approach to urban design. This was not merely an opportunity to pitch ideas, but also an affirmation of her worth as a designer, a professional, and a leader. Today, she began, her voice steady. I want to present a strategy that embraces the stories behind our clients' needs while balancing practicality with creativity. Megan watched as the faces of her colleagues softened, expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity as she presented her data-driven approach intertwined with compelling testimonials. No longer was she merely confronting John's challenges. She was demonstrating how authentic narratives could drive innovation, a concept every bit as vital for successful designs as any bottom-line metric. The energy surged as she elaborated on how emotional investment translated into tangible outcomes. She could see Derek leaning forward, genuinely engaged, nodding at key points of her argument. The enthusiasm she felt while explaining the seamless connection between emotional resonance and functional design was electrifying. Yet, she knew John would challenge her. And he did. "Megan, it's a nice theory," he said, maintaining his trademark skepticism. "But do our clients actually care about emotive design when it comes to cold hard numbers?" In her previous life, that question would have set off alarm bells in her heart. But not today. "They do, John," she replied confidently, leaning into the tension. "Engaging clients on a personal level elevates their investment and satisfaction. I have research supporting how projects that resonate with personal stories don't just meet financial goals, they exceed them." Megan could see him analyzing her conviction, assessing whether she truly believed what she said. In that moment, she felt a silence swell as she held her ground, calm and firm. The ensuing debate was one she had anticipated, but not in the way she thought. Colleagues began to chime in, voicing their support and curiosity, sparking lively discussions surrounding Megan's ideas. The walls built by John's rigid viewpoints started to crack as insights flowed from others in the room, providing Megan with validation and energy. Her team began to engage with passion, echoing sentiments that only hours before she had feared would be met with criticism. "I agree with Megan. If we want long-term clients, we need to build a rapport," Jacob dared to declare, taking ownership of her narrative. Megan's heart swelled with pride. This was no longer just her fight. It was theirs, a reaffirmation that she had inspired a collective energy sharper than her own initial motivation. By the close of the meeting, John's demeanor had shifted slightly, albeit begrudgingly. He acknowledged the strength of the discussions, and as they wrapped up, he said, "I see some merit in what you're proposing, Megan." Those words felt monumental, a validation that propelled her as she gathered her materials and bowed out of the meeting, the room still buzzing with the momentum she had ignited. Leaving the conference room that day, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Not only had she faced John, she had flourished beyond her previous limitations. With each stride back to her office, Megan reflected on the transition she had undergone throughout this journey. She had conquered not just external challenges, but the internal barriers too. This was the transformation she had longed for, a recognition of her voice and value in an industry that often overshadowed the individual. She had proven not only to herself, but to an entire team that authenticity could thrive within pragmatism, that her designs could resonate deeply and still be grounded in functionality. As she navigated through her office, surrounded by sketches representing her envisioned future, a solid confidence filled her spirit. Megan had forged an identity as a leader, unraveling the stigma of doubt while triumphing over fear. Her designs were no longer echoes of someone else's vision. They were authentic reflections of herself and the communities she aimed to serve. Behind her, the building hummed with purpose, a testament to her growth. This was only the beginning, and she embraced the thrill of what lay ahead. No longer did the shadows weigh upon her. They had vanished in the face of the light she had harnessed within herself. Megan paused at her desk, taking a deep breath as she looked over her sketches. Today, she had not just shown her colleagues her designs. She had demonstrated her courage and commitment to her beliefs. This was her accomplishment. This was her victory. Now, how would she further harness this achievement? Would she push her narrative forward, inspire change, and continue advocating for authenticity in design? That was the task ahead, and it ignited her with renewed vigor. Complete fulfillment surged from within her, and she smiled, facing her reflection in the window. She had arrived not just as a designer, but as a resounding force for change in her profession. This was her moment, and she refused to let it slip away. So, here is the call to action. You need to subscribe now to follow the journey of those who choose to overcome adversity and claim their rightful place. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see not just the challenges, but the transformative power of believing in oneself. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure stories like Megan's continue to inspire. And comment your reactions and theories about this empowering ending below. Your engagement matters.